also need sometimes people to remind me to do that, especially these days when one tends to be distracted. So just a word, I know, I trust that many of you were worried through what we now call the Hebrew version of the Night of the Drones. So yeah, it was that, and I stayed up most of it because I felt it was a moment that I wanted to be part of, and I wanted to see how it developed. Yossi, my husband, went to bed and slept through all of it and woke up in the morning to ask me what transpired. Eh, I I don't know that I don't know that I was scared. I don't think I was scared. And Yossi, my husband's son, who is not my son, I'm in a second marriage, and he has been for many, many years a combat pilot in the Air Force, and now now does his reserve duty at Central Command. And he sent us an sort of an email, a message before. He said, "Not one single one will hit anything. Trust me." And okay, and with that, he went to work, and I went to the television, and his father went to bed. So this is how it was at our end. If I can be honest with you, the main feeling that I felt throughout the night is total anger at our leadership that brought this upon us, this too. It was so not needed. It was so unnecessary, and just pushing it and pushing it and pushing the envelope with the crazies in his government. So I was mainly angry throughout the night and not scared, just angry. And now back to our poetry. So what I have chosen for the third session, but you may be interested to know that in the last couple of weeks I was approached by an American Jewish publishing house who are interested in publishing some of this poetry, and we spoke already with the translators because most of what the American readership wants is the English version, of course, the translation, and therefore they needed to be part of the conversation, and they just had one, and we are moving ahead, and there will be something coming in about 3 months or so, which is what the time the publishing house is thinking it's gonna take to get all the rights and everything. And none of us is wanting to be paid for that. We want all of it to be put into one of the causes that need support, and we will try to reach an agreement with the poets which one it should be, or give a few options and then divide the money. But it's not going to be a moneymaker for any of us. On the contrary, just another opportunity to fundraise and to support that which we believe needs to be supported. So with that, let us go to our choice for tonight. And I'm sharing vision so that we can read together and look at the text together. There will be a sort of a surprised, unplanned poem, but I will let it be a real surprise. So I want to check with the pictures again, because we always made part of that you are familiar already with Michael Zatz, and I think all the others are new faces for you, and we will read some of their poetry. And as I'm looking on the screen, you now have on your screen among the poets three rabbis, two women and a guy. And one of them, Rav Elchanan Nir, is an Orthodox rabbi, a Rosh Metivta in a large Orthodox yeshiva in Israel. So I'm trying to give voice and give space to a variety of voices. We will start with Michael Zatz. You may remember that Michael was our stepping stone to go into this world with the poem Illusion. And I like oftentimes to use his short haiku-like poems to introduce us to an idea, to introduce us into a feeling, and then go along with it. So let us go straight ahead to two very short and, I think, touching poems by Michael, and I will try to explain why I chose them. Reading the Hebrew first. מאז אותה שבת שחורה תמיד תניחו, שגם עם עיניים עצומות איני ישן. גם על חלומות אל תשאלו אותי, אני חומק מסיוטים כמו מכדורים. I really hope that some of the beauty of the rhythm of the Hebrew gets through even if you do not speak the language. Ever since that Black Shabbat, always assume that even if my eyes are closed, I am not asleep. Do not ask me about dreams either. I avoid nightmares as though they were bullets. So again, just like the first poem that we have seen with Michael Illusion, that captures one, separate feeling, like not spreading all over the place, not trying to describe a totality of experience, just a small advice, You want to be my friend? If you see me with eyes closed, don't assume that I'm asleep, because I'm in a different mode, and he sets the mode ever since that Black Shabbat. And now we know from Michael, we know from ourselves that this is now a milestone. There is a world before that Black Shabbat, and there is a world since. And Michael is now putting it there. I'm a different person. I may look something, I'm something else. There are certain rules to observe when you talk to me. Don't ask me about dreams. I'm afraid of them. I'm trying to avoid nightmares. So this is why I'm not sleeping. Wakefulness, sleep mode, both are difficult. Both are terrible. And the other Michael impression that I want to share with you, and take the opportunity, you may remember, you don't have to, but you may remember that when I first introduced Michael 2 weeks ago, I said he is one of the few among these people who have ever been published before. So this is just a cover page of Michael's first poetry book, Shavir Chalomot, Fragile Dreams. And I've put it on so that you know. The poem does not come from that book, because that book is an earlier one and the poem is a recent one. And it's interesting because it takes us into the Michael Zatz world, the world that I knew about him before October 7th, because I brought the poetry of Michael Zatz into my world of teaching, because he had written widely and deeply about the immigration experience. And this is why I chose this particular poem again to be included among the many that he's writing these days, because he is equating now the new experience to something that was his many years ago. He immigrated as a young child, and he is now an adult and a successful professional and fluent Hebrew, and not a problem. And yet, שפה חדשה. זה שוב מרגיש כמו שהייתי ילד עולה. אני עושה פני מבין, מהנהן להסכמה, מניד ראש לשלילה, אבל כולם מסביבי מדברים שפה אחרת, שאני שוב לומד מחדש, עברית של אחרי 7 באוקטובר. A new language. Once again, I feel like an immigrant child, pretending that I understand, nodding in agreement, shaking my head in disagreement, but everyone around me is speaking another language, one that I relearn anew after October 7th Hebrew. Okay, again, so a vignette, a small experience. I am back to a sense of not being at home, being in a strange land, not understanding the language. I don't get it. What is happening? Like a new immigrant child, and there is a stress. It's not an adult immigrant. As a child who is pretending, he doesn't want to be caught not knowing, not understanding. So he's pretending, and this sensation is coming back to the adult, extremely successful professional lawyer who says that it was this reality. I'm again that helpless child who doesn't understand the environment. So Michael again led us into it, and now I want to introduce to you a another name poet whom we have not yet met in the first two meetings, and the name is Rachel or Rachel Sharansky Danziger. So the name Sharansky may be familiar if you took part many, many years ago in Let My People Go. Anatoly Sharansky is her father. Rachel Sharansky Danziger is the daughter of Anatoly Sharansky. She works at Pardes, which is where I know her from, a Jewish center of learning for students both Israeli and from abroad. And she writes oftentimes in English, and then it is translated by her or others to Hebrew, and occasionally in Hebrew. So we will start with this poem that she had written in Hebrew, one of the very early ones that appeared in those frantic days of the beginning that we didn't know if we were coming or going or what was accepted. And it's called During the Day, but actually it's about the night. But the title sort of to cover the night from us, to avoid the nightmares in a continued conversation with Michael, she takes us through the day experience. Bayom. Note, just in case you're interested in linguistics, that in order to translate one Hebrew word, bayom, you need three words in English, during the day. And the languages are really very, very different. And the Hebrew can do the conjugation during the day by just a preposition before the word yom, and it gets you the idea. Just a word because I love languages. Bayom. רחל שרנסקי דנציגר. ביום אפשר לאפות עוגיות לנשות המילואימניקים. ביום אפשר לשלוח הודעות מחזקות לחברים. ביום אפשר לנחם אבלים, ביום אפשר להשקיע בחיים. אבל בשעות הלילה אין איך להשתיק את המתים. אני שוכבת וליבי ער ודוהר, רודף אחרי שברי סיפורים שסופם כבר ידוע, והכל, הכל, הכל מרגיש פצוע, פגוע, ואיך אפשר לישון ואיך אפשר לשקוט, כשאיבדנו לנצח יותר מ1,000 לבבות. During the day. During the day, one can bake cookies for the wives of the reservists. During the day, one can send strengthening messages to friends. During the day, one can comfort mourners. During the day, one can invest in life. But at night, there is no way to silence the dead. I lie down and my heart is awake, awake and galloping, chasing fragments of stories whose endings are well known. And everything, everything, everything hurts and feels wounded, injured, damaged. And how can one sleep? And how can one be tranquil when we have lost for all eternity more than 1,000 hearts? You can discern how early this is when she does not even know the number of victims that rose well beyond 1,500. Okay, so it's really the early days. What I want you to pay attention to is, although it's subtle, in some places these things are more obvious, but there are two subtle references to Jewish sacred texts here, and we will pick them out so that you can see them. So first of all, the repetition, bayom, 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 bayom in Hebrew, during the day, during the day. אפשר. It's a little bit echoing what is coming, the Pesach Haggadah, when we hear Karev Yom, when we have repetitions of songs that all start with the same line and we repeat them. So there is an echo of the structure of Haggadah poetry, Haggadah tunes that they sing. And then all the things that you can do during the day and somehow keep you together. And then we come to this second part where it says, But at night there is no way to silence the dead. I lie down and my heart is awake. This is a very clear reference to the Song of Songs, chapter 5. But I was asleep, but my heart was wakeful. In the original text, staying awake at night is an in anticipation for the lover and in waiting to rush with him, during the night with dew on your hair and this very intimate, sensual experience. And she is now taking it into the new night, which is not about expecting a lover, whether a real one or a metaphorical one, as oftentimes we read the Song of Songs. It's immaterial. None of that. I lie down and my heart is awake, awake and galloping, chasing fragments of stories whose endings are well known. No, we are not expecting lovers these nights. We are endlessly listening to the radio, to the television, to stories of survivors, of victims, of parents, of bereaved people who have been released from captivity, and we know the ending, and we know we will not be able to sleep afterwards, and still we listen. So the night reference is taking us into the Song of Song and literally undermines it, giving the same words a totally different meaning in the new reality. And in a collection of poems that I will now try to teach separately, that I call We Need a New Torah Now, which is the title of one of the poems, I will put together, of course, you will get a copy, Rachel, and you can share it with other people, all the poems that are in conversation with sacred text. And there are many of them, so that we can look at how Jewish the poetry that is written today is, how it continues the tradition of inner conversation with earlier generations. And let me show you another one. So we continue with this verse. First of all, the heart that is awake, and then it is connected to all the lost more than 1,000 hearts. So this is why the heart can now not expect lovers. This is why the heart cannot either metaphorically or really engage passionate love, because it is all connected to the stories of the people who had died, who lost their lives. But there's another reference which is beautiful. Hakol, 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 which again talks to Ve'ahavta. And everything, everything, everything. Let's go back to what follows the Shema. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, and you shall love Adonai your God with all your heart and all your etc. She is the everything is actually the translation of the hakol, hakol, hakol. The Hebrew is clearly in conversation with ahavta, which is also about love, but it is not about love now. It's an undermining of the ahavta, just like the previous line is an undermining of a quote from the Song of Songs. So one of the ways in Jewish poetry, very strongly after the Shoah, is in order to share with the reader who did not experience what the poet had, is to let them feel the destruction of the beloved poetic structures that we know and love. And she actually pulls the carpet from underneath the Song of Song, pulls the carpet from underneath the Ahavta, and gives them a new meaning. And the new meaning is painful. You want to understand how broken I am? Not only my language, as we have seen in the first session, my prayers, my reading of Shir Shirim bring different association now. Hakol, 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 that I recite daily in the Ahavta is now feeling hurt and wounded and not whole and painful. So let me stop for a minute just to see if anybody would like to react to this poem. Maybe if you have a question or a comment about this or the two Michael poems, we could take a minute to discuss them. Yes, please. So, Mr. Cutler, I don't know what your first
The
name is. It's not
Chuck.
Ada. Sure.
So
Yeah.
the Bayom 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 reminds me of the prayer on Yom Kippurim. Hayom
Mhm.
Ta'atzenu, Hayom Tagadlenu, Hayom Devarchenu.
Absolutely. Yeah, can work with that. I agree. Thank you so much. Jacqueline,
Yes.
your hand is
Hi.
raised.
Yeah, I was just writing down what I was thinking so I wouldn't
Sure.
forget it.
I know the feeling.
My association to the Hakol, 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 which is really such an integral part of what it means for God to love us and us to love God. And I think you said this, that God's love means something different, but it's almost it makes me feel like in this repetition she has to remind herself that actually God does love us, that God's love feels so absent in that moment that she has to kind of dig into these words from the Ve'ahavta to remind herself
Herself.
in this sense of pain and anguish that where was God's love in all of this?
Mm-hmm. Where
That
was,
was,
where is it,
or is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Rachel.
Maybe I'm digging now too deeply, but in seeing the word hakol, I was thinking of al kol ele, and
Hmm.
um, and just that on the bitterness and the sweetness, on the sting and the honey, that on this too, where is the good? And obviously, it's a mystery; we don't see it, but it's for everything. Everything is here.
And there is another element that you are not hearing, but is very strong here, so let me share it. When we are in the rallies with the families of the hostages, what we normally cry out is Et kulam achshav, all of them now. So it's like kol, hakol, et kulam. This is what the rally is all about. Achshav, like now. And this echoes in the poems all over. I'll show you more instances. So if you are not part of these rallies, if you don't hear this cry, this literal crying, at least once a week, which is how often I go, but there are more rallies than that. So this word, the hakol, the kulam, is around us all the time. So yes, all these associations are valid. And now comes the moment for my surprise to you, because believe it or not, Rachel Danziger Sharansky had, when you asked me or other people, and maybe yourself were wondering, what did one do during that night of the drones? I know about myself. I know about Rachel Danziger Sharansky. She wrote a poem and she posted it on her Facebook on Monday morning, which was like yesterday, right, for me. And she wrote in English, and I asked her if it's okay if I translated it into Hebrew. I said yes, 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 because the English came first to her, and she wanted to write it as it came. So let us put it on the screen for us, and I will. First of all, as a background, I chose two pictures, one of an interception above the Dome of the Rock and the other of an interception over the Knesset, the parliament, the Israeli parliament. So on the right-hand side of your screen is one of those missiles being intercepted over the Knesset and the other over the Dome of the Rock. And Rachel Danziger Sharansky lives in Jerusalem. Contrary, live in Tel Aviv, so it's a little bit different. So what shall we do? Let me do the Ivrit, which is a translation, mine, and then we'll go to the original English. And she gave the poem no title yet. It will probably come and it will be called Halayla or something like that tonight. הלילה צבענו את מפתן בתינו באומץ. עוד אנו מחכים הותר רסן המשחית, הוא קרב לאט, כל כך לאט. מצב זר לנו, אנו בוגרי שערות פתע ותיקי השבעה באוקטובר, והעולם שהתפרק במהירות, אנו ביחד כאן, מוגנים בבתינו הלילה, מפתני בתינו אדומים מאומץ, ניצבים מול הפחד בגופנו, שעה שאנו הולכים לישון. I think there are many interesting levels here. We color our doorways with courage tonight. Totally the Pesach, marking the doors for safety on the night. We are a week before Pesach. What other imagery would come to a Jewish writer? Also, you can see from the way her head is covered that Rachel Danziger is an observant woman, an Orthodox woman. We color our doorways with courage tonight as we wait and wait. Out there, the mashchit, the destructor, the destroyer, is loose and moving slowly, so very slowly. You know that it took hours for those missiles to arrive from Iran to Israel, and we were there. So slowly, so very slowly, an odd pace for us who are the veterans of the sudden flurry, veterans of October 7th, and the world that quickly fell apart. Can you see what is happening? Now October 7th is a point of reference. We are now the people who were created in October 7th, and therefore we are not used to waiting, we are used to shock. And the world that quickly fell apart. But we are here together, protected in our homes tonight, and the doorways are red with our courage, and we stood up to fear with our bodies by letting them go to sleep. We trust our defense system. We trust in God. I will go to sleep tonight. I will trust. This is the statement she makes. I wasn't as courageous. I didn't go to sleep. I don't think she did. I think she wrote the poetry and she stood awake, but at least the kids maybe went to sleep, you know? So, yeah. And this is like totally fresh. This poem is not yet 48 hours old. And you realize that one normally does not teach poetry like that the day after it was published. But we are into a different learning experience as well, as much as we are into other experiences. And with that, I'm going to take you to yet another one, and a poem that is complicated, that will spread over 2 slides. Mothers by Osnat Eldar. I'm also adding in this case with the permission of the artist Yara Eshet, who created art all along. She's an Israeli who lives in Canada nowadays, and her permission was given to use her art in my sessions for a donation for the reconstruction of Kibbutz Be'eri, which I joyfully gave. So I want you to know that even by doing this particular, working with this particular slide, we are also part of an effort to rebuild, because this was the choice of the artist. And we'll talk a little bit more about Osnat Eldar, who is a woman rabbi for a kehillah, a reform kehillah in Zichron Yaakov. Let's do the Ivrit first, and then we'll go to the English. I almost forgot the Ivrit. Imahot. בלילות הן מתאספות אחת אחת. זו שביתה נחטפה ותמונתה המגואלת בדם לא נותנת מנוח. זו שבנה נפל בקרב, זו שילדיה יישארו לעד בממד הקטן בפאתי הבית בקיבוץ, זו שנשארה דמומה בצידו השני של הקו חורטת בגופה את הזוועות, מדי פעם היא לחשה לא עולה, אני אוהבת אותך, אני איתך, אני כאן, הלו. זאת שלא הספיקה להיפרד, זו שאוחזת בשבריר של סרטון המראה שהוא חי, זו שהתעוררה בשבת וידיעת המוות נבטה בתוכה. Let us go to the English. Mothers by Osnat Eldar. They are gathering at night, one by one. She whose daughter was abducted and her blood-stained picture doesn't allow her any peace. She whose son fell in battle, she whose children will remain forever in the little safe room in the corner of the house on the kibbutz, she who remained mute on the other end of the line, scratching the horrors into her skin, she who whispered from time to him or to her, I love you, I'm with you, I'm here, hello, she who wasn't able to say goodbye, she who is holding onto fragments of a film clip showing him alive, she who woke up on Shabbat with the knowledge of death germinating within her. Before we even go to these so painful descriptions of mothers, I want you to follow me in another ability or perception, and that is that we are fanning out, we are spreading. If in the first class we were talking about the Kaddish and the experiences on the kibbutz on that day, if in the second class we were with the women who were taking care of the children of the evacuated families, we are now stepping into the larger community to meet the relatives, the parents of. This is not a poem about the hostages. This is not a poem about the people who were murdered in Kibbutz Be'eri or Nachal Oz. This is not a poem about the over 350 victims at the festival. This is about the largest circles. In this case, the parents who were saved, who were not murdered, who are alive. But what kind of life? So underneath this, with all the pain of what it describes, there is another call here. Know that even if you were not hit personally, there are, concentric circles of people being touched, because it's not only their mother, it's maybe the grandmother and the aunt and the sister-in-law and the neighbor, etc. All these people who are connected. And now the different experiences. So what if your daughter was abducted and hers was the picture bloodstained that we have all seen? What if you were one of those parents or kids were hiding for hours and you could just talk to them on the phone quietly, I'm with you, I love you, and then hello, and no more? What if you never even got the call and never had a chance to even say goodbye because they were killed before they were managed to call? What if you are hanging on to a clip of a few seconds that shows your son still alive in their hands? Just that. And the point of view of the writer, of the poet, is they are coming, they are gathering. Remember Michael, who was afraid of nightmares in the first poem we saw today? So she is now inviting us into her nightmares, into this experience. She cannot sleep. Just like Rachel Sharansky said, she too cannot sleep. But now we are invited into the non-sleep and share all these people gathering around you at night, even if you are not one of them. They haunt your dreams, they haunt your thoughts, you cannot sleep. Let's continue. We'll continue with the English so we have a little bit more time for others. At night, in my darkened room, they are wandering in circles, drooped shoulders, restless sleep crazed mothers, If only they could change places with the boy or the girl ready for captivity or death. Mothers, not yet used to wandering, they come to me at night, one by one. I am hugging them with compassion, with longing, absorbing into my body the feeling of guilt, the helplessness, the abyss, the caressing and caressing silently their new maternal title imposed on them, bereaved mothers, imahot shakulot. I want to step out from my PowerPoint for yet another minute here and to address everybody who is in a clergy position, cantors, rabbis, etc., in our virtual room. Osnat Eldar is a rabbi, a woman rabbi, and this now is her new community. She has mothers like that in her community. Being a rabbi these days in Israel means that your congregation had been touched in one of those examples or more than one. You are called upon now to hold that as well. I'm saying that and asking you, I'm sure you have done that, but if you have rabbi colleagues in Israel, beyond family, beyond friends, reach out to your rabbi colleagues in Israel. They need every support that they can have because this is now their new life, their new congregations. These are the mothers and the fathers and the siblings in their communities. So I really wanted to take the opportunity to mention that to you. And I have Osdat permission to do that because she participated in one of the classes and she actually shared this feeling with the clergy in the room. There were quite a few. And if there is any comment or response to this poem before we continue, let me know. Okay, so let us do one more. Okay. One of the things that had happened in these 6 months, we are going into the 7th since, is that poetry that had appeared, and you feel that we are moving from the first session 2 weeks ago, which dealt with the immediate, into things that started happening later. And one of the things that we have seen is that poetry addressed the Jewish calendar. There were Hanukkah-related poems, there were Purim-related poems, the Passover-related poems are coming now, and we also had poems relating to the weekly readings, to the weekly parshiyot, as they evolved. The thing happened on Simchat Torah, which was the conclusion and the beginning of the new cycle of Shabbat Bereshit. And then a couple of weeks later, we moved into Parashat Shmot. So I just gave you, the opening of the Torah reading of Parashat Shmot. These are the names of the sons of Israel who went to Egypt, etc., etc. But how more appropriate to read this even as we are going towards Pesach and towards the Egypt and coming out of Egypt experience. So on the week of the Parashat Shemot, when we enumerate the numbers of Bnei Israel who went on this journey to Egypt, we have a poem by Yael Lifshitz, also a rabbi, who is saying, oh, this is the Torah portion for this week? Well, I'd like to offer another similar one, Ve'ele Shmot, and these are the names. And we had a presentation of chairs in a big hall, in a big amphitheater, of all the hostages at the beginning and victims. And so these two are the names. This is our new Shmot reading. And let us read the poem. So this time we'll do the Ivrit first and then the English. יעל ליפשיץ. ואלה שמות בני ישראל, 86 לילות. ואלה שמות המכוסים בעלתה, ואלה שמות יורדים לתהומות יגון, שנגדהו מחייהם בחטף. ואלה שמות בני ישראל ששוועתם עולה מעומק מחילות האפלה, ואין מלאך ואין שרף שיושיעם, ואין אף לא לשון אחת של גאולה, אך יש תקווה ולה כנפיים מרעידות, שביכולתה לפרוץ המיצרים, לקרוא להם בשמם, ולמשותם, ולהשיבם אל ארץ החיים. It's all strict conversation with the Parsha of Shemot. And these are the names of the children of Israel, 80 and another 6 nights. This means this is 110 days ago when this was written, because we are in 193. 80 and another. You know exactly the date when this was written. And these are the names of those covered by darkness. And these are the names of those descending to the abyss of grief, whose lives were abducted and cut off from their life. And these are the names of the children of Israel, whose cry rises from the depths of the tunnels of darkness. And there is no angel, no seraph to save them. Not even a single expression, will come to that in a moment, of deliverance. But there is hope, with trembling wings, with the power to break out of the straits, Mitzrayim, and call them by their names and draw them out like Moses from the water, Limshotam, to bring them back to the land of the living. And with the quote that we need to address ourselves to is the quote that says, Bevakasha, here it is on our screen. In the biblical text, will explain the commentators that God uses 4 expressions of deliverance. 4 לשונות של גאולה שנאמר במצרים שמות ו', the 6th chapter of the book of Exodus. והוצאתי והצלתי וגאלתי ולקחתי. There are 4 different terms used by God in describing the deliverance from Egypt. For it is states, and I will bring forth, and I shall deliver, and I shall redeem, and I shall take out. And the poet says not one single expression, language of deliverance, not one. Rashi will note the 4, and Yael says not even one for them these days. When I will show you the blessing for the 5th cup, the 5th glass of wine that is suggested, that I just came across today, you will see that it refers to the same verse. So the word for straits is similar to the word of Egypt in Hebrew. So Mitzrayim, Meitzarim, and of course Lifshotam, to bring them out of the water, is a reference to Moses' name Moshe, which means to deliver out of the water. So that too is another phenomenon that we need to pay attention to, that the poetry that is written today is not just referring to contemporary events. It's not just descriptive and political. It is also creating a new layer of midrash, a new layer of Jewish conversation with ancient text, as we have always done. Opposing, undermining, restructuring, arguing with text. But the solid basis of the Jewish text is there. And I'm checking to see if there is anybody who would like to address this. And if not, we will just... Yes, please, Mindy, please go ahead. Please unmute also. Yeah.
Rachel Sharansky's poem, there was blood on the door, which
Yeah.
also, and it was is it possible to go back to that, or?
Of course, of course. Yeah, clear reference to that night back in Egypt, the night of the firstborn. Absolutely. Let me take you back there. Not a problem. This one. Yes.
Where she talks about courage and being like salvation. And that struck me immediately as a sign, as it was.
As it was in Egypt, exactly, a reference to that. I totally agree with that. And it was written, like 2 days ago. So we are during that night of the drones, of the attack from Iran, and we are a week before Pesach, and the imagery is totally connected to that night of the firstborn in the story of Exodus. Thank you. I absolutely can see that and agree with that reference. And thank you, Mindy. Anybody else on this or other? So if not, let us try and do maybe one more, maybe two. We'll see. Okay, so I now need to go back to where we have been. And well, finally, we come to this extremely interesting poet. So a word about Elchanan Nir and his poem To Run Away. I could spend the whole session on this one. So Elchanan Nir is an Orthodox rabbi who is a Rosh Metivta, a head of a whole branch of a yeshiva. If I want to be non-committed politically, I would say the West Bank. If I wanted to be a right-wing, I would say Samaria. If I wanted to be left-wing, I would say the occupied territories, but you get the picture. He lives on a settlement in a very large yeshiva, however, that is committed to pluralistic thinking, open-mindedness, and among the many poets who are writing these days, Elchanan Nir, beyond publishing books of Torah commentary and such, he published already 9 books of poetry. And he encourages the yeshiva students to go into creative writing, etc. So he's a very interesting person to follow. Some of the things he had written are heartbreaking because being who he is, an Orthodox rabbi with his yeshiva students, they went out and many of them are fighting and many of them fell in battle as they were in these Zionist yeshivot. But those who were not called upon and were not on reserve duty went out on those first couple of weeks when we had dozens of funerals every day to dig graves and to do the funerals. This is where he spent his days and his nights, and he writes about that as well. I didn't want to bring that type of poetry to you, but something that more encourages, I think, thinking into the state of mind, livroach. התורה, הגבילים, התפילה, המילים, הרומן, השירים, הכל, אנחנו זורקים ברגע, רק שינוח בנו זעפך, הכל לאש, הכל עכשיו, אלבומי החתונה, צלחות החרסינה עם פס הכסף מסבתא, ציורי הבית הרכים מגן דינה, כולם עם גג אדום בלי רצפה, אין לנו זמן. הם באים, שומעים אותם חזק, פרצו הכל, הגדרות, החומה, המגדלים, טימאו השמנים. תודיע מתי אתה בא. מהר, הגבר, הכל כבר עשן. הסתכל, אנחנו כאן, אין לנו עוד לאן לברוח. To run away. The Torah, the scrolls, the prayers, the words, the novel, the poems, everything. We would throw them away in an instant if only your rage would come to rest. Jonah in the boat, They want to make the sea calm, the seas rage. And now what Elchanan is seeing is God's rage. He said, okay, who shall we throw in the water? Everything. We'll give you everything. Just stop already. If only your rage would come to rest, everything, to the fire, everything right now. The wedding albums, the china plates, edged with silver from grandma, the simple drawing of houses from Dina's kindergarten, all with red roof and no floor. You know, like the kids draw houses, you know that, I'm sure. We have no time left. They are coming. You can hear their power. They have breached everything, the fences, the wall, the tower. They have desecrated the oil, the Hanukkah image. Tell us, when are you coming? Quickly, be stronger. Everything is going up in smoke. Look, we are here. We have nowhere else to run. Talking about hanging on to your faith. When everything is falling apart and he doesn't see, just give me a light, give me a sign. What do I have to do to get your attention? So beyond the reference to Jonah, beyond the reference to Hanukkah, beyond the reference of calling upon him to come, I want you to see a few things in the structure of this poem that are very beautiful. So here is the quote with Jonah, and they heave Jonah overboard and the sea stopped raging. I want you to look at what he is offering to give God: the picture albums from weddings, the kids' drawings, and grandma's china. Like, these are the things that probably came to mind that he would hate to lose, but he is ready to give them up. And had we had, you know, more time for this particular poem, or if you want to go back to it on your own, ask yourself, what would you offer? What would be your offering if you felt that you needed a deal with God to come through already, to stop raging, and you will give them everything? And in the case of Elchanan Nir, he gives us these three examples. Also note that when he says that he is ready to give up everything, it includes the Torah, the scrolls, the prayer, the words, the novel, the poems. So he is, text for him is not only sacred text. Text for him is also modern text, poetry, novels, etc. He is part of that more universal world within Orthodoxy that is not that current, but it exists. Another thing that I want you to notice, I made a reference to that, but I want you to see it very clearly. Hakol la'esh, hakol achshav. Everything to the fire, everything right now, echoing that which we cry in rallies. Hakol achshav, et kulam achshav, all of them now. A very clear echo of the demonstrations and the rallies. But stronger even with that, look at the two cries. En lanu zman, we have no time left. En lanu le'an, we have nowhere else. This is it. This is the place you told us to come to for safe haven. So what now? No time, nowhere. And the last, and to me most beautiful creation is this. Hem ba'im matai ata ba. They are coming. When are you coming? Ba'im ba. And to conclude, just read the endings of the lines. Ata ba, ashan kan, le'an livroach. It creates a sentence. Are you coming? Smoke here. Nowhere else to run. the essence of the poem just in medieval poetry, just like in medieval Hebrew poetry from Spain, you can see structures and acricons and natricons within the poem that give you the essence of the poem. And here it's so clear. Just listen to the Hebrew. Ata ba ashan kan le'an livroach. Are you coming? Smoke here, nowhere else to run. And the title of the poem is To Run Away. The option is considered. Where? But we can't hang on to this. We need to run. But where to? Tell us. And what I want to share with you in conclusion of my class, but I'm still open to remain and of course have conversation. This appeared on my Facebook page, on the page of a friend who is also an modern Orthodox rabbi. And he shared this and it's like went viral, a suggestion for the upcoming Seders. So I'm reading the Hebrew, Kos Chamishi. לכבוד החטופים והחטופות בדאגה, באהבה ובאחריות, כל המסובים קמים ואומרים, יהי רצון שיתקיימו בכל חטופה וכל חטוף, כל לשונות הגאולה, והוצאתי והצלתי וגאלתי ולקחתי והבאתי. ויזכו כולם לשוב לחיק משפחותיהם בריאים ושלמים, ונזכה כולנו לקבל את פניהם בשמחה שאין למעלה ממנה, במהרה בימינו אמן. So for Seder Pesach 5784, the fifth cup in honor of the hostages with concern, love and unity, all present rise and say, may it be your will that for every hostage all 5 expressions of redemption be fulfilled. I will deliver, I will free, I will redeem, I will take out, I will return them. May they all come back to their families healthy and whole, and may we all merit welcoming them with unsurpassed happiness, speedy in our days. Amen. This will be mailed to you. You don't need to quickly copy or something. I thought this would be an appropriate conclusion for our class today, but let me again, for the 3rd time in this class, step out of my PowerPoint and invite you to react, ask, whatever comes to mind. Claire, are you raising your hand or you were just fixing? No, you were not. Okay. Yes, Sunny, please go ahead. Just don't forget to unmute.
Thank you. I was just wondering in the poem that you just presented, where at the beginning he talks about giving up Torah and scrolls. Is the thought to give up the physical Torah and scroll and other things that pertain to Judaism? Or is he saying, I will give up my Judaism? I will give up being Jewish to have the return?
I'm not sure. I think what we hear is a desperate cry, and just like in the case of Jonah, they were willing to throw a living person into the water to save their life. He is willing to throw everything precious to him to stop the abduction, to stop the rape, to stop the killing, to stop the destruction. Take anything, just take it. We need to live. They are coming. Where are you? Nowhere to go. Smoke. You see the urgency. You see the immediacy. It's not time for scrolls and Torah. We need to live. We need to breathe. We need to bring back the hostages. Help. And whatever it takes. Thank you for that, Sunny. Anybody else?
Ein Milim, I think, looking at all of us.
Okay, but give it a moment. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, good. Joan,
Yeah.
Harvey.
The last poem about to run reminded me much of the poetry of the Shoah.
True.
But when there was, again, all that was going on around and no escape from what was known, and with smoke, the fire and the smoke were, images that had come out before. And that was, I guess, when we talk about loss, it is also, it comes and reminds it the same way.
I think you are very right, Harvey. Not so much in the ongoing days of what had transpired here, but the first day, October 7th, when Jews again were helpless, with no defense, with no army coming for hours and hours and hours, a Shoah-like reality prevailed. With the smoke, with the atrocities, with everything that came, the cruelty, the horrible death, and that transpired into poetry. I totally agree with you. There, I can see, I wrote my master's degree dissertation about Holocaust literature, and I can see the structures that I discerned so many years ago. Trust me, I did my master's degree many years ago. But the structures that one could see in poetry following the Holocaust are emerging again with the imagery, and the smoke is there as an indicator. I'm totally with you on that one. Thank you. Yes, Mindy.
What was the word for run away?
Livroach, livroach, barach, livroach. Yeah.
I think Jackie had a question as well in the chat just about who wrote that fifth cup reading, that blessing.
I don't know. I know who posted it, but it was probably a couple of rabbis, getting together, or clergy. And the person who posted it is from Tel Aviv. I know he's one of the people from the Zeitlin synagogue, which is a modern Orthodox one in Tel. I know him personally. This is how I share, his Facebook page. He's a tour guide by profession, but he is the one that organizes on the Hostel Square every Friday and every Shabbat, the Kabbalat Shabbat, the Kiddush on Friday, and the Havdalah on Saturday. So he's very involved with the hostages and their families, and the providing services, clergy services to them. He's not a rabbi, I know that. He's a tour guide by profession, but he's very involved in creating these opportunities for Shabbat Kiddush and for Havdalah every week for the last 6 months. He never missed one. And he's the one I could ask him and find out who wrote it, but I'll probably discover that it was more than one person. Yes.
I was wondering, I was feeling a lot of anger and rage in the poetry today, especially. And I'm wondering, and from talking to Israelis, I know some days it's probably sadness is the overwhelming emotion, other days it's still blind rage and anger. I'm wondering what you're feeling is the overriding emotion these days. Is the anger as strong as it was on the 7th? Is it been replaced by more sadness?
I think those who were angry and are angry and will continue to be angry, among whom I belong, will continue to be angry. Now, let it be very clear that these are also the people who, from not day one, but minute one, have been involved in helping, providing services, and stepping in where the government was not there. That most of the services provided to people who were suffering in one way or another were provided and still are by civil society organizations and volunteers. And I belong to those, and we are angry. And if you attend the weekly rallies in Tel Aviv, the anger is growing, and the numbers of angry people coming out on the street. But I don't want to paint a false picture for you. There are people on the other side, the extreme of the other side, who think that this is amazing. These are Armageddon days. We should have a war with Iran, and then Messiah will come for sure. And they are out there loud and clear, and some of them are in our government, the people who believe that. They are there, and they are explicit, and they are articulate. And if you want to listen to them on the equivalent of Fox News in Israel, Channel 14, I cannot handle it, but if you are interested to hear them. So Israel is not monolithic, Rachel. Israel has a variety of voices. People ask me, being 78, why do I insist on going to every single rally on Saturday night, which is tiring. It's 2.5 hours on your feet, walking there and walking back, and the traffic is stuck and so on. So I go there because these are the only 2 hours a week when I am sure of my environment, and that every single person around me is there because they feel the way I do. And it's comforting to be there, and it's good to be with those people with whom we think alike. Maybe it's false, and maybe it's creating a bubble around me, but I do that for at least 2 weeks, for 2 hours a week, just to feel that strength of people who, yes, are angry with me and need and want to change and are committed to work towards that. Yeah. Anything else, dear friends? Well, if there is none, then let me wish you as happy a Seder, or Seders in your case, as possible. And you only need to make Aliyah, and then you can get away with one Seder. Think about that. Yeah. I have a friend who made Aliyah because she discovered that that was the safest way not to have to climb Masada anymore. Because only tourists do that. Israelis don't feel the urge to climb Masada. And she made Aliyah for that, because she was sick and tired in working in Jewish education and climbing Masada every year, coming with the groups. So not having to do a second Seder is also a good reason. But apart from that, have as wonderful as you can have it this year. And thank you for being part of this and helping me to create and raise the funds for what